Hello, Josh.
Hi, Lily.
Thank you for speaking to me today on the podcast.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question that I will be asking all the people on the show. Who or what is something that currently inspires you?
I probably wouldn't pick a person. I'd probably just say more. I'd probably say children.
Okay.
And the reason why I think children are kind of inspiring is because they just live in kind of the present, the moment.
Yeah.
They just do, and they say what they think, and they live their life fairly freely on the whole.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite inspirational in a way. It's something that's that I think adults look at and go, I remember that, and I wish I was like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that the way they're able to think and the way they're able to just be without too much thought, too much mind chatter,
Yeah.
is quite. It's quite. I don't know if inspirational is the word, but it's nice to see.
Yeah, there's almost like something to learn in going backwards and going back to a time before we actually unlearned how to be that way. And I was on the beach the other day in Cornwall, and I actually had a similar thought because there were kids playing in the sand with their parents, and I was like, oh, that must be so nice to just not have a single thought. They're just there playing with the rocks, whatever they were doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of cool. Would you mind just sharing a bit about who you are and what you do in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, so I'm Josh, and what I do now, I used to work with kids who were permanently excluded. I was a teacher, but now I sell wood-fired pizzas out of my horse box. So I've got my own business, and I do parties and festivals and do like groups where I just go rock up at like a housing estate and sell pizzas. So so that's what I do most of the time, and then when I'm not doing that, I try and live the life of somebody who's self-employed. So I get to kind of walk the dog when I want, go for a swim when I want, and go on holiday when I can afford it. So yeah.
So the first question I wanted to ask was, what is one kind of stigma surrounding mental health, male mental health, or mental health in general, that you could you would want to eradicate and almost see not be a thing?
I think it's a good question. I think the whole world of mental health, I think, has kind of become got a life of its own now. So I think people almost don't know where to put themselves with the kind of the language of mental health, and I think to some extent, I think that's one of the things that I think makes it difficult in itself. And I think instead of thinking about the language of mental health, because just like the word mental, I mean, you know, blokes call each other names, don't they? They go, you're mental.
Yeah.
It's got stigma attached to it just by its name, and certainly within our culture, so within British culture, I think it has. So I think what's more comfortable for, I guess, guys to talk about things like fitness. So there's not much of a stigma, there's not much controversy around talking about, oh, I've been to the gym, I'm getting fit.
Yeah.
But when you talk about your mind and you use terms like mental health, I think it's a bit, it's firstly something else that someone else is struggling with. It's something that people don't tend to use. You wouldn't be down the pub and go, how's your mental health?
No.
So I think the language around the whole issue of mental health, and I think it's moved forward from where it was 20 years ago in some ways, but I think in other ways, people I don't know, it's that they're tired of it. I think it feels like a label almost, and I think for guys particularly, it's not the kind of language I think they'd use with their mates. And I think thinking about it of, you know, I guess having a healthy mind, or looking after your mind and your body.
Yeah.
So I guess that in itself is something that possibly is a stigma, I guess.
Yeah, I think the same about the word wellness as well, because it's such a buzzword now, like mental health, wellness, because I think everyone's talking about it everywhere. So it's almost like now the power behind it is lost a little bit, and it kind of has lost a bit of that emphasis of what it's supposed to mean, because of that whole just the popularity around it on social media in particular. How would you define sensitivity? Like, do you consider there being different types of sensitivity, or kind of one sort of umbrella definition?
It's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that one. How would I define sensitivity? I guess in two ways. I guess you can take things, you can be sensitive, so you can easily be offended, or you can be maybe anxious about things. You can it can link with maybe lacking confidence. Or you can also look at it in terms of somebody's got a sensitive nature, so they are sensitive to other people's feelings.
Yeah.
They're aware of other people's feelings. They've got empathy. So I guess I see it in those two ways, really.
Yeah. Do you think that sensitivity, like kind of the mental health discussion amongst males in particular, is something that wouldn't kind of be super fun to speak about as a man? I guess you wouldn't. I guess women kind of have this collaborative sort of unspoken awareness that women are labelled as more sensitive and they're more willing to speak about emotions. But do you think that with men that's kind of not the case?
I would say that, yeah. I mean, I think in my sort of groups of mates, I think we much more readily do help each other out, and if we're struggling with anything.
Yeah.
But in terms of using the word sensitivity or talking about that's something I've never heard guys talk about.
No.
So I think they might allude to it in terms of how they're feeling, but I don't think they'd kind of say, oh yeah, you're feeling sensitive, or that's really sensitive of you, even.
Yeah.
It's not something you'd get credit for in that way. So somebody say, oh, you're such a sensitive guy. Not another guy wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
A woman might say that to a guy.
Yeah.
I think they would, in fact, but I don't think guys say that to each other too much.
No, I think women as well would be quicker to label themselves as sensitive, I think, and it's kind of less of a thing, really. I mean, even myself, sometimes I would say, oh, I was just being a bit sensitive, or, I think it's just interesting how for men and women there's kind of a differentiation in the terminology that's used around that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like the word nagging, isn't it? Nagging tends to get attributed to women.
Yeah.
Whereas guys can moan or complain or whatever, but it's the same thing. But women, if they do it, they get termed like being a nag.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I guess it's not something that that guys would necessarily use and talk about and share, but I think as many guys as women are sensitive.
Yeah. No,
that's the thing, is I think they're sensitive in both regards, that they actually can become offended, or they can feel worried about what people think of them.
Yeah.
Or if they're doing the right thing, they could feel sensitive, and they can also be very sensitive, very thoughtful towards other people. They could, I think one thing about being sensitive towards people is asking about them, rather than just talking about yourself. I tend to talk about myself quite a lot.
I think everyone does. It's probably
but I notice it. I mean, you're talking about what inspires me. One of the things that I notice, a quality, I guess, that I notice in people, and especially when I see it in young lads, because I've seen it recently in a few young lads, is they ask about you, and they're actually listening.
Yeah.
And again, that's something I struggle to do sometimes. I'm sometimes waiting to say what I want to say, which I takes practice. But what comes along with that often is being sensitive. It's a kind of goes hand in hand, I think, being sensitive and thinking about having empathy, or just being interested in other people and showing interest. That's kind of goes with sensitivity, I think. And like I said, I think there are as many guys as there are women that are like that.
Yeah.
It's just not necessarily highlighted, I suppose.
Yeah, I think as well, the rise of social media is making people that, I don't know if it's like self-awareness that it's cultivating amongst people, but I think because we're constantly, or younger people are constantly exposed to other people's stories and feelings and lives and versions of reality and this and that, I think people then reflect on themselves a bit more in their own lives.
Do you mean that you think that more young people are perhaps more aware, or that they, because of social media,
maybe.
one of the upshots of social media is that it's altering young people's kind of way of being a bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think there is definitely, obviously that's happening in like both negative and positive ways, and I think the negative side gets a lot more attention, and I do agree with all of that. I think that it should be moderated, and I think that it shouldn't be so kind of dominant in people's lives now. But I do think that it's like presenting younger people with ideas and kind of versions of things that they wouldn't necessarily consider by themselves, and it probably is creating more of an open-mindedness. And I think with kind of, you know, mental health, it is being talked about so much more online, so I think younger people now probably have more awareness of that. What kind of pressures do you think in society exist for men that kind of arise as a result of being a man? I don't know if it's pressures to kind of behave a certain way. I know that toxic masculinity is a whole other buzzword, and it's kind of the idea that men have to behave in a certain way to be considered masculine or present themselves in a way that's approved by society. I mean, do you think that that is a thing?
I think the way I think about it is one of the I guess, I don't know if it's drivers in being a man. And I think every man is different, every woman is different, and there's massive crossover. But if we're trying to generalize a bit, I think the kind of, because I think everybody, all men and women, try and find comfort and a place in the world. They find something that feels right for them. And I think those things, the messages to men and women to be their place in the world is kind of sold to them as something different. But I also think there's probably some innate differences, and I think one of the things that men, possibly without even realizing it, strive for is kind of control and power. And both things can be positive and both things can be negative, so they're not inherently bad things. But I think there have been very clear identities for men in the past. So obviously, you know, there was a clear distinction between men go to work, women stay at home. That's obviously a very old-fashioned time, but it was clear. It was a clear demarcation of what men's role was and is, and in that role you gain a sense of control and power and status. And I think part of men's psychology and ego is around having control and power, some control and power. As I said, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, but it often is.
And we're speaking very like stereotypically.
Of course.
We have to do anyway. But do you think that maybe some of that then is just carried through from the past and traditional roles and stuff? Because I think, I mean, if you look at when people have a baby, for example, I think the woman is the first one. I mean, that might be like a natural maternal thing as well, but I think it's more widely accepted that the woman is the one to take all the time off work and stay home. And I know that obviously doesn't happen with a lot of people, but I think, there probably is still that male role in society of going out and earning the money and being the provider and all of this. And I think, I don't know if that maybe puts pressure on men still to do that and to kind of be that role for...
Well, I think that's where a lot of the backlash has built up from, because men have lost their leadership role as a provider. And this isn't all men. I think a lot of men who feel more comfortable in the power and the control that they have in their life and who they are don't necessarily have that need to have power over something else or someone else. But I think there's lots of people who do, and I think that's one of the pressures for men is, and I guess social media's had a big impact on this because it's kind of divided people along those lines. So I think men who have maybe, and this isn't necessarily just about the time, the era that we're in, I think anyone who is disenfranchised, often who doesn't have much say in the world, often who is poorer, doesn't have a lot of choices, they've got to find a place for themselves. And as a man, that can be around trying to find some sense of power. And if you're lacking power or control, one way to do it is to look out at the world and say, well, men are being, treated like this, and that's where I think, a lot of the term toxic masculinity, it's a home for people for men who feel disenfranchised or without power.
I think that is a great answer as well, because I think that kind of pressure to adhere to like a role and finding a purpose. I don't know if as well women kind of think, well, one day I'm going to be a mother, or I'm going to do this or that. Maybe that in itself provides a sense of purpose that men maybe don't have innately, or maybe, I don't know. And I think womanhood as well in general, and I can only speak from being a woman, it seems that womanhood is very inclusive, and there's all these shared experiences that are constantly talked about. Women tend to be more open. So I wonder if men maybe in that kind of pursuit of purpose feel less included and less part of a wider group than maybe women do anyway.
I guess like I said, it's different for everyone, and I guess there's lots of different groups. I think now there are lots of groups who have men who feel much more free to speak with with men and women about their feelings, and have much less pressure, who feel much more able to stay at home and be the house husband, or stay at home and look after children, to be able to not do a 9-to-5 job, to be able to share the earning with their partner, and so I think for some men the pressures are less, or they're different, whereas I think for other men, to do with their own history, their own families, their own culture, I imagine it appears to be a lot worse, because there's no clear home for some men. There's no clear kind of model of what a man could do and should do, because there's lots in the world, in the media, showing an alternative view of a man, and an alternative view of women. And if you feel disenfranchised, that could make you sort of antagonistic towards that, and your home is then right. I'm gonna kind of lean towards that's the enemy. That's the enemy.
I think it is quite easy to fall into that, especially when, like traditional roles are breaking down, and there is just a less clear-cut path of what people should do. And I think on the whole as well, that's becoming more of a problem. People don't know what to do with their lives because there are just so many options. So I think the pressures probably apply to both men and women, but I think it probably impacts men in that way.
For me, I've been in a career. I've just made a decision. Well, actually, I'm going to go and sell wood-fired cheese on toast. Basically, I was a head teacher before, and now I'm going to do this, and I feel comfortable do that. I imagine 30 years ago that would have not been looked at as maybe very positive, and so I think there's both. I think there's a lot more freedoms for men and women in some ways.
No, there definitely are. So you mentioned about your kind of friendship group being maybe more open. Do you think that male friendships in general are evolving to be more of a safe space where kind of people do speak about their feelings more and more open? Because I know that traditionally it has kind of, there's always been the sort of notion that men don't talk about feelings and they just do like man stuff, and I just wondered if you think that's kind of evolving or changing.
Well, in my experience, definitely. I'd definitely say that that conversations between some men and my mates are are much more emotionally supportive. People feel, my mates, I guess, feel able to use words like love. They love you. Mates will say that to each other.
Yeah.
And one thing I think I remember, whether this is right or not, but I remember from, I'm going to say the 90s maybe, and I think it was possibly the rise of like when hip hop started to become big.
Yeah.
And I think in black culture, what guys would do is they'd hand slap.
Yeah.
They started, and they have a lot of different kind of, physical greetings that weren't shake hands. Now, when I was a kid, that's all men ever did.
Yeah.
And even children, really. They'd go up to each other and they shake hands. That was it. I don't remember anything else. I mean, obviously people hugged, but I don't think I ever saw men hugging. And now, most men actually hug because they give each other a hand slap and then a whack on the back kind of thing. And that in itself, I think, is a departure from where it used to be when I was younger. So I think there's definitely been some development, whether it's happened kind of without people realizing it, and there's that as cultures have mixed and changed, and we've sort of adapted from each other's culture. I mean, we've got like a lot more links to America than we used to do when I was a kid. So for instance, a film in America used to come out and it would be 6 to 12 months before it would come over here.
Yeah.
And there were so many things that were very, very different. Now, because of globalization, I think there's a lot more mixing of different cultures and languages and foods and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And so the British culture, I think, has opened up a bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's included in how men communicate with each other.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I think I'd go back and say, but that's certain groups of men. I think in other groups of men, I would imagine that it's not only not like that, it could even be toxically difficult.
Yeah.
But from my experience, yes, I think my mates talk to me and I talk to them about things I'm worried about, or if I'm anxious and all, and they'll use words like I'm feeling anxious, which guys would not have done years ago.
I do think that's really good, and I think that's kind of displayed in, if you look at older generations, like old men, they probably aren't going around hugging and talking about their feelings. So I think that probably still stands from that for them, how it was in the past. But yeah, I do think that it's a good thing.
But I also think that there's also been a backlash to some of that. So words like snowflake, that groups of people who I think are trying to find a different place and a different control and power, like I said earlier, they find that difficult, and that's why I think some of the politics is about looking backwards. So some of the politics looks backwards as if 30 years ago was a better time. And I think there are some things that were more wholesome messages, if that's the word, less abusive. The level of different kind of, obviously we've got online now. We never used to have computers when I was a kid, so I can understand some people harking back to a time when things were simpler, and certainly that's true. And I think there were some qualities qualities of life that people had then that they don't have now. But I think the reverse is also true. There's some real benefits now.
No, there are, especially because things like mental health are becoming a much more widespread topic, and people are open to discussing stuff more. So yeah, I do think that's good. Okay. I like this question. So obviously you are a father. Do you think that being a father and raising a daughter in particular has changed the way that you view the role of males, or kind of that toxic masculinity, or being open to discussing things? Do you think that that's maybe changed the way that you have been in your own life?
Well, yeah, because I've raised 3 daughters and 1 son, and I mean, it can't not. I think it can't not have taught me like loads. And I mean, as a dad, I'm very protective. It's just instinctive to care and worry about my children. And if I think about the girls, one of the things you worry about is how they're getting on in their relationships. How I'm not just thinking about their intimate relationships. I mean also their friendships and how they're treated generally by men, because some men's behaviours, well, put it another way, I know that the vast majority of women have to put up with daily kind of, I don't know what the word is, I don't want to say, I don't think if it's abusive, I think some of it's definitely abusive, but maybe low level kind of uncomfortable comments, feelings of not necessarily being safe, things like that. So I think I'm aware that women as a woman, that's part of life. Not saying that means it's okay, but it is part of life. And women report more and more that that's what they experience. So as a dad, I'm aware of that, and I guess I try to listen to my girls about what their experience of life is. I also, the more I listen to them, the more I realise they know more than I do about their own existence and their own situation, and things I'm worrying about, they kind of, years ahead of of managing it and being used to it and knowing how it fits into their own life. So they can kind of figure it out themselves, really. But as a dad, yes, it's something I bored them with by asking them about stuff a lot.
That's nice though, everyone needs that. Okay, well, thank you very much for talking to me. It's been nice to talk to you.
Well, thanks for the chat.
Okay, great.